India ink has become an important medium for illustrators and creatives all over the world. Its history helps us to understand centuries and centuries of art and culture from the country where it originated, China. It's a history that unites calligraphy and painting, Eastern philosophy, and drunken poets. India ink is one of the most ancient drawing mediums out there, and its origins are directly connected to the development of the Chinese alphabet. The oldest ideograms discovered thus far can be found on a peculiar divination tool, oracle bones. Created at least 1250 years before Christ, these bones would be thrown into the fire and the future interpreted through their cracks. Many of them had characters carved into them, while others had inked inscriptions. The people who inhabited present-day China had been using ink for thousands of years, made through a mixture of soot and water. But in 221 BC, the first Chinese emperor turned this ink into a tool that would become crucial to the establishment of his empire. Qin Shi Huang is known for his eccentricities as a dictator, such as the original Great Wall and the Terracotta Army. Huang was obsessed with immortality, and if he couldn't achieve it himself, he'd achieve it through his empire. But after unifying the country, he was faced with a major problem. How does one organize such a large territory? Huang and the emperors who followed him decided to force everyone to write using the same characters, thus creating the first unified Chinese alphabet. An alphabet that was written with ink and that allowed thousands and thousands of bureaucrats to begin organizing the territories. Using ink, they built the foundation of the country that we know today and ensured that ink would always be linked to China's political life. So it isn't surprising that the first master calligraphers weren't artists or creatives, but bureaucrats. The famous mandarins, officials and lawyers, educated through the teachings of Confucius, served the empire until the 20th century. They used a solid bar of ink that they rubbed on an inkstone, mixed with water, and then applied it on paper with a brush. Chinese ideograms were simplifications of objects and concepts from the real world. And with the passing of centuries, the bureaucrats went beyond symbols and started painting reality. The successors of those calligraphers would create the painting style that we now associate with China. Atmospheric landscapes, black and white hues, an absence of human forms. They would achieve this using ink and a drawing technique called sumi-e. Sumi-e, which translates as to paint with black ink, is really a Japanese term. Although the Chinese had already been using this technique for a long time before Buddhist monks introduced it to Japan in the 14th century. In China, they called it mo shui, painting with ink and wash to achieve infinite shades of black. These painters didn't care much for color and created impossible perspectives without trying to stay true to external realities. They didn't need to glorify their patrons nor recreate impressive battles like European artists. It wasn't their head that guided the brush, but their heart, trained in Taoism, which looks beyond appearances. And after centuries of imperial conflict, where did these scholars take refuge? Nature. This drawing of Santa Maria della Neve, a Leonardo da Vinci piece, was traditionally considered one of the first landscapes without humans in the history of European art, besides a few Greek and Roman frescoes. Dating back to 1473, decades would pass before landscape painting would take hold in Europe. But in China, they had been doing it for centuries. Li Gongnian painted winter evening landscape in 1120, more than 300 years before Da Vinci. In fact, the similarities between the two pieces are quite evident. The painting of Chinese landscapes was called shanshui, literally mountain water, and it would become one of the most elevated and most practiced styles by bureaucrats. Chinese artists always deeply respected tradition, but this didn't keep them from constantly innovating. Mi Fu was a poet who enjoyed drinking and worshipped stones. He called his favorite "my brother." Mi painted mountains using dots that are strongly reminiscent of the pointillism of Seurat or Signac. So the eccentric poet and the disciples who followed him were 800 years ahead of impressionistic techniques. In the West, India ink would play a crucial role in a wide variety of artistic disciplines after the development of trade routes. It's essential to tattoo culture, one of the foundations of comic illustration, and artists from all periods and movements have used it in their work. Every country has taken advantage of its versatility to adapt it to their customs and styles. For example, the English imported it from India, which is why they named it India ink. But it doesn't matter what you call it. Just remember that every time you use it, you're participating in a history that is thousands of years old.